Hey everybody, welcome to a Tatter-a-fact here at the Girls Inc. studio in Las Vegas. Thank you for hanging out with me today. I got a super cool guest all the way from the UK. I have known her for quite a few years. She's super smart. She's a little nerdy, or a lot nerdy like me, where her mind works super scientific, great artist. She's beloved all over the UK and beyond, mega talented, and I just adore her. So I am super stoked to have with me today Alice Kingdom, all the way from the UK. Hey, Alice.
Hey, Taryn. How's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. That gave me little cold goosebumps. I've gone all silly and feel a bit starry-eyed with you.
You know. Alice, I do have that effect on the ladies.
I hear that's true.
I didn't even practice that introduction. No, it just came. But that's really how I feel about you. We met for the first time. I believe I was speaking at the conference.
At UK PMU conference.
Yes,
that's right.
When Teresa Wild was running it, and that was in Heathrow. Yeah. And you and I met, and I felt like, when you meet people instantly, sometimes with some people, you just feel like instantly, like just comfortable and a warmth, and like, you know what, I could be friends with her. Even outside PMU, like I could like hang with her, I could do lunch with her, I could chill with her, and I felt like that, about you, and we've messaged here and there and stayed somewhat in contact since then. But you and I just got to really hang out at the AAM.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, that was really good. And Katie, I got to meet Katie, so I was super stoked.
Yeah.
She's coming on here, I think next week. We got Katie.
Yeah, she told me.
Yeah.
She told me.
Yeah. So
I'm
super stoked. So for those that don't know who you are, can you just like introduce yourself and just a brief little background about you and how you got into PMU? And
of course. So I've been in the beauty industry probably for about 13 years. And I first got into the industry through skin treatments. So it wasn't PMU wasn't kind of my first stop, if you like. Skin treatments was my first stop. And I think if I'm being brutal, it was because I was thinking, I'm going to get old and I need to do something. I need to do something about my skin. I need to know how the skin works and all of the different treatments that I can have. And maybe if I learn how to do some of them, then I can do them on myself. And as you mentioned, I'm a bit of a nerd. And as the more research that I did, the more I thought that I wanted to get into the industry. And I happened to meet someone who was on a very similar kind of path, and we opened kind of a salon sort of together. Then I had my own brows done, and I can remember being so intrigued by the whole process. And the lady that did my brows, I think she was an accountant, or she had a background in something totally non-beauty. And it sparked that thing in me where I thought, I could do this. I need to find out more about this, and I need to do this myself. And that was the beginning of my journey. So that was back in 2015, I think.
Okay.
And I became, I started my training. I trained with Everlasting Brows in microblading, because I wasn't really interested in eyeliner and lips at the time. I just wanted to take a little bit of a dipping my toe in. And this was just at the point where microblading was starting to get really big in the UK. So it was sort of perfect timing for me. Yeah. And then, I think I met you, it would have been 2016. I just trained in machine probably 6 months before. And I can remember that conference that I was so kind of wide-eyed and like a human sponge that hadn't even realised that there were these people that were famous across the world for doing this thing I just found this love for.
Right.
And it's kind of spiraled from there, I guess. I made a bit of a pain in the bum of myself with everlasting brows, and before I knew it, they said, come and join our team. So I did. I started working with Teresa Wild, and she said, do you want to help out with the conference? And so I did. COVID came along, and I had so much kind of content and so many ideas that I wanted to put online that was the perfect time for me to launch some online courses. So I did. Yep. And I've just kind of run with it, really. Yeah, that's my background, and that's kind of where I am at the moment. I do clients still. I have online courses. I do a lot of one-to-one mentoring and conversion courses. I don't tend to teach in big groups because I prefer that real kind of boutique one-to-one experience. Both for the student, but also for me. I find it less stressful. Yeah, so business-wise, that's me. I've got 2 children. I've got a little boy called Archie, who's 12, not so little anymore, and a little girl called 9, and a little girl called Rose, who's 9.
Archie's a popular name in the UK, yes?
Yeah, it never used to be, but it is now.
Yeah.
It is now.
Yeah.
And I'm married to Steve, and Steve's in the military, and he is into extreme sports. So there's never really a dull moment in our house. I'm either running around getting organised for training or driving halfway across the country to do clients. And he's in the same scenario. So it's full on all of the time.
So you're a busy lady.
Yeah.
Yes. So let me ask you this. So I think most people get in, the majority of people, I might be wrong, but I think the majority or a high percentage of people get in the industry via the beauty industry. That's where we have really overlapped and become very parallel with the beauty industry. Like it's not, I don't believe we're one big industry, because I think permanent makeup is very, very, it's a niche. It's very different. It requires a different skill set. I don't think like permanent makeup is a beauty treatment, but we are very much apart and entwined and overlapping with the beauty industry, which has been fantastic, I think for both industries.
I think it's an easy transition, or it feels like an easier transition from beauty into permanent makeup, especially if you're already someone that knows the eyebrow.
Right, right. That's how I got in. Yeah, that's how I got in. I was an esthetician, and I was primarily I was waxing and shaping eyebrows. I really didn't dig doing facials. It was a little too intimate for me. But I really liked waxing and shaping eyebrows, and I was waxing the whole body, and so that was my path also into PMU, and then PMU got me into actually body tattooing. So yeah, it's an avenue into the beauty industry is an avenue into PMU for a lot of people. So, and I think a lot of people start with eyebrows. They start with eyebrows only. And what I find is a lot of them stay with eyebrows. Like I see so many talented artists that do only eyebrows, and they're not really venturing into eyeliner or lips. And it seems to me when they do venture out of brows and they're looking to learn a new procedure, it seems like now they're actually learning lips. Like after brows, they're kind of turning to lips before eyeliner. It seems like eyeliner is that one procedure that super intimidates, the brow artist.
Yeah.
So
it's something about the eyes, and I'm not sure why, because I always say anytime I get an inquiry about one-to-one training, and specifically, it's funny you mention that, because a lot of bladers that are looking to transition to machine, I will sort of say to them, you know, what are your goals? Where do you want to go? Do you, when they say, well, I want to do brows, and maybe I'll think about eyeliner.
Yeah.
But you can tell that trepidation that they've got in their voice.
Yeah.
And actually, I said, well, to be honest, once you get over the fact that you're dealing with an eyeball, it's fine. Half the time when I'm tattooing an eyeliner, I kind of forget there's even a person under there. I'm so focused on what I'm doing. I could be tattooing anything.
Yeah, 100%.
I know.
Yeah, 100%. I just did a class like 3 weeks ago, and 2 of them had never been on an eyeliner before, and one had done like 4 or 5. And yeah, and they all had a lot of anxiety. And that's exactly what I told them. You know, it's learning the do's and don'ts. You already have control of your machine. You already understand depth. You're doing a decent eyebrow. It's mostly getting over the fear of being around an eyeball. And I think eyeliner probably is the most complicated of all the procedures, in my opinion, because it is near an eyeball. You know, the eyes tear, they blink, they move. I think clients are more likely to have anxiety and discomfort with an eyeliner wrap, you know, over brows and lips. It's like, you know, because the needle's right there.
There's a bit of that projection, you know, when you talk to the client, and I'll often say, well, hey, you know, you've got beautiful eyebrows, you know, eyeliner next. I kind of joke with them. And a lot of them, you know, I'm half joking, but half wanting to open up that conversation. And some of them will say, oh, yes, definitely, I'm up for that. And the other half will say, you know, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure. And again, that's just about being able to manage your clients. I remember sitting in on a couple of courses with Will Anthony when he was training some other techs in the UK, really picking up on his way of client management. You know, making sure that you're informing your clients what you're doing, not babying them.
Yeah.
You know, making sure that it's really important that they don't tap their feet and they don't smile and they don't try and talk to you while they're working.
Yeah.
I think that can be another thing sometimes, is managing our clients to get them to do what we want them to do to make our life easier.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And that's, I think, the obstacle or the challenge I come across the most when teaching brow artists, you know, eyeliner is, and it might be because they do come from the beauty industry or massage too. They're used to, you know, a lighter touch. They're used to pampering the client, you know, and maybe they're pampering the client with brows. But when it comes to that eyeliner, you have to control eye movement.
We're not walking around with bare feet. And
not at all. You know, your grip has to be firm because you have to control eye movement. You have to control blinking. Yeah. There's a lot you have to control. And and I find that the clients get in there, and the students get in there, and you know, it's a light touch, and they're pampering, and they're worrying about hurting them. And I'm always like, that you need to erase those thoughts from your mind. If your stretch or your grip is hurting the client will inform you. Don't just assume it. Just get in there, grab that client, nice firm stretch, and command that procedure. You have to be in control and commanding that procedure the whole way through. And that takes confidence, right?
It does. And, you know, I had my eyeliner done just this week, actually.
Oh.
With the very talented British artist, Stephanie Toms. And poor Steffi, I just wanted to talk to her through the whole thing. And I kept on saying, I'll be quiet in a minute now, Stephanie. She did a beautiful job despite me. She gave me such a leeway because I imagine ordinarily.
Well, I think maybe for some clients it relieves anxiety if they can chat with you. Do you think?
Maybe.
Right. You know, as I think there's a little bit of anxiety like involved. What I find with eyeliner is most clients, it's not a pain thing. They came in anticipating it was going to hurt a lot. And to their surprise, it didn't. They were quite comfortable when it came to pain and discomfort. but there is a level of, it's more of an anxiety because the needle's very close to their eye. And sometimes they end up seeing the needle. And so it's more of a mental thing for clients rather than a pain or discomfort thing. That's what I've found over the years. But anyway, so yay. So let's talk about Li a little bit.
I should love to talk about Li.
Okay.
I have renewed love and passion for Li over the last few months. So I learned with Li as a microblader, and in truth, I struggled with them. I don't think it was Li's fault. I think it was me. I think it was my technique. And I think that a lot of artists do that. I see in forums there will be people who have maybe learned with something and their techniques that, they may be at that point where they don't know that their technique is consistent or not. So they're looking at their tools. They're looking, is it my pigments? Is it my needles? Is it my blades? What is it that's wrong? And I think that pigments tends to be one of those first things that people come to. What can I change? Well, I'll change the paints, if you like. I'll change the paints that I'm using to draw these pictures.
Yep.
And my technique wasn't great when I started out. I don't think anyone's technique is super until you've had some really good time on skin. And I was over modifying them. I was doing what so many of us were taught to do, was because we were blading and we were using this technique which inherently can heal cooler, that we would dump in half a pigment ring of ungrey or grey vanish or something neon orange, and then wonder why a year down the line they were coming back fuzzy and pink and all those things, or why my strokes were blurring together. And actually that was to do with my technique. It was nothing to do with the pigments at all. And I've been on quite a journey with my pigments. I've tried a lot of brands. There are a lot that I really rate and that I really love. And then there are also ones which I've tried and just weren't for me. For whatever reason, I just didn't love them. And I guess I felt I needed something new in my permanent makeup life. I think all of us as artists get to the point where we just want a bit of an excitement and a bit of adventure. So for me, changing my pigment brand again, it was about relearning something. And so I thought I'll go back to Li. And I went back to Li because I know that they've got such an unrivaled reputation for what they do. They are such an incredibly ethical brand. And they've just got a great range of colours and formulations for all situations, which also they didn't necessarily have when I started. So now we've got the loaded line. I learned with velvet, but I've discovered that actually I prefer the aqua.
Dark, yeah.
And then when I knew that they were formulating this new range, the new Euro line for Reach, that was a real push for me to go back to them, because I've been using a hybrid line for the last 3 or 4 years and really loving the results. So this was almost like a marriage of the brand that I learned with, that I really loved, but I couldn't quite get to work for me because I wasn't experienced enough, or I was just using it at the wrong time, and a new formulation which was similar to the formulation that I had kind of grown with as an artist. So those two things I think happened at the right time. I was looking to make a bit of a shake up in what I was doing, change something, get a bit excited about the colours and the work that I was doing again. And these formulations came along at the same time. And I'm a little bit in love with them.
Yeah.
Terry.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I wasn't I was really excited. You know, the new EU regulations and the new bans, the bans on like lots of the ingredients and colorants. It's always stressful to a manufacturer, right? Like all of a sudden, Aqua, Velvet, that have been passing, like LI, before it was ever a thing, or, you know, I mean, LI from the get-go, the last 28 years have been sending their pigments to the CTL in Germany, you know, every 2 years. We've passed testing with flying colors. We've always, Darlene Story, we mentioned ethical, one of the, probably the most ethical human being I've ever met. She puts her product and her ethics and the quality of her way before profit, Allison. And some entrepreneurs and business people would probably tell her, well, that's not too smart. You got to kind of have this balance. And she doesn't. You know, that's why she doesn't sell. She doesn't do nothing. She's just in that lab with her daughter. Her daughter's got her master's in chemistry and biology. And she's not on social media. She's just, you know, in the lab formulating. And so that's all she has to focus on. And you know, and I think, you know, LI's been around for so long. I saw someone on social media, they just went back to LI and they referred to LI as the OG pigment line of the industry. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I kind of like that. That's kind of cool.
And I think it really is. And I think that, you know, if anyone's listening to this and they might be in a situation where, you know, because a lot of people did learn with LI. A lot of people were in a very similar situation as me. You know, they were kind of muddling their way through and trying to learn the craft. And there's definitely been a lot of good products that I have maybe overlooked or not given a fair chance to. I mean, without knowing that it was my technique or the way that I'd used them. Mm-hmm. And so it was almost important for me to go back to LI. That was the other thing in my head. I think it was a bit of an experiment, you know, like this was part of the adventure. See how they are now, see how they are now that my technique has grown. And I originally thought I'd go back to the colours that I knew and loved. I thought I'd be using mochaccino and cappuccino and Navajo brown and all of my old favourites. And when I discovered this new line, me starting to use that was really because I knew that we were looking into maybe doing some distributor stuff. I thought, well, I need to know this. If I'm going to talk to people about the product, I need to know it. So I'd better do some brows with this first, just to get to know it. And in honesty, I haven't really used any of the original Aqua colours because I'm enjoying using
the new line. Much. Yeah. Well, I think people are people think Aqua is an all iron oxide line, and for the 30,
and it's not. Is it?
No, it's not, and that's what a lot of people don't understand. So you know, Aqua is celebrating its like 30th birthday. You know, this year. Aqua and Velvet. That's how long Aqua and Velvet have been in the industry. And over the last 30 years, it's evolved. You know, I mean, we're constantly keeping up with, you know, new technology, new chemistry, the trends of PMU. So it's a formula. We've been through a lot. It's been through a lot, Aqua and Velvet. It's been in the industry for 30 years all over the world. It's been through a lot of, you know, change and advancement and evolvement to what it is today. Just recently, we thinned down the line to be a little bit thinner, so it flows through today's needle much better. You know, Aqua used to be a little creamier, but and it worked well because the needles, they had a wider tube. But now all these new needles have a long, really skinny tip, and the creamy Aqua didn't flow as well through that, so we had to thin the line down so it had great flow through the new needle that the artists in the industry are using. So, you know, we're constantly tweaking it. And I think that's why Aqua and Velvet are so good. It's like, it's been nurtured. It's, it's been tended to and nurtured, and we've raised it. The industry has raised it. We've listened to the industry and the artists that have used it over the last, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. But Aqua was always, it's iron oxide dominant, but we've always had a blend of organics in there for harmony, for balance.
And it's more highly pigmented now than it was when I used it as well. I can remember
much more.
Started using it.
Yes.
And this is all something that I hear people saying, when I'm just chatting with my friends and colleagues, and I say, oh, I've, recently kind of feel like I've restarted my journey because I've gone back to the brand that the brand that was the one that I did all of my brows for the first year. And I've gone back, and they're kind of saying, well, how does it layer? Are you finding it hard work? Are you? And I'm like, no, not at all. Like all of these, or some of these misconceptions are just that, really. I think now that now that I know, I mean, are they different to work with than with a a purely organic line? Well, yeah, of course they are, but they're so easy to work with. They, I don't feel like I'm pushing a rock up a hill trying to get them into the skin at all.
No.
And I think sometimes how people have felt about inorganics in the past.
Yeah,
it's just not the case.
Well, with the new so the new Aqua EU line is not iron oxide dominant or organic. It's a true hybrid. Do you know? So LI's had experience with that for the last 30 years. And then we upped our knowledge and our formulation with hybrids when we developed Jen Boyd's line. She wanted, a line. I approached her, what about doing more of a hybrid? Because, I wanted LI to really get in there and create more of a hybrid. So adding more organics, a higher percentage for organics than Aqua even had. And look at Jen Boyd's line. I mean, that line is beloved. Monica Avani's line.
Yeah.
Same thing. It's more of a hybrid, So we took, LI took all that knowledge and really applied it. We really had to up our game as far as balance organics versus iron oxides and create even more of a true hybrid with the new Aqua EU colors. And, it's the carriers and the way, the carriers are the delivery system of a pigment. You have your colorants, you have your sterile water, your glycerin, and, all your liquefiers. But what delivers that mixture into the skin? It's the carriers that the manufacturer chooses to use. So we've been really, we've spent the last 8-9 years really, really experimenting with different carriers, combining carriers to get our pigments, even iron oxides, to implant fast. Quicker, better, faster.
It's like they do what they say on the tin. I thought that I was going to have a real exploratory period with them. I thought that I was going to do some brows, and I was kind of like, well, maybe these will come back at touch up and they might need a little bit more doing, or they might, I need to learn them again. They've been such a dream to work with. Every time I'm getting something back and I'm looking through my notes and seeing what it was that I used, they're just really simple to use. They're going into the skin beautifully. They clean off the skin. They don't dry too quickly. They're not too thick. They're not too thin. The colours are beautiful, and the results on the skin, I mean, I get pretty good retention anyway, but the retention's good for something which I really thought that with although I'd used the line before, I thought I was going to have to relearn them. I thought it was going to be, as I've mentioned, I thought it was going to be an adventure. I thought it was going to be exploratory. I thought that Mrs. Smith might come back with her eyebrows. I don't know, that there might be some surprises. But hasn't been. It's been like I've taken my recipe of the techniques that I use, and I've used that recipe, and it's come out the oven just as I expected, and even better. There's been no surprises with them, so it's boring in that in that case, but beautifully boring. That it's not been hard work, which is lovely, really, really good.
Right. Well, I hate surprises. So if I hate surprises, I figure all artists and technicians hate surprises. But we just knew with this formula, and this is not a new formula, Alison, this is not a new formula. We took what we learned with, Jen Boyd's line, Monica Avani's line, and then we took that technology and that knowledge and that experience, because those are two very successful lines. They've been out for a few years now, tons of healed results. We took that knowledge, that technology, going into the formulation of the new EU Reach Aqua colors. And we spent about, 2.5 years on them, because we knew LI knew these new bans and these new regulations were coming. They knew they were coming. We knew when they were going into effect. So they started really super early on. So we had a lot of time to formulate the colors and, get them tested. And they're winners. I mean, they're winners. We couldn't be more happy with the formula. One of the questions I get a lot, and they're coming in weekly now that people are starting to use the Aqua EU colors, is it the same colors as like Aqua, like Aqua Hazelnut, Aqua Mochaccino? Is it the same colors? Do they heal the same tones? And what we tried to do is make the new EU Reach colors comparable to the Aqua colors, but and a lot of them they'll heal very similar and comparable, but it's impossible to get them to heal exactly the same, because you're using different colorants and different ingredients, because we're following the EU Reach compliant guidelines now.
And I've just been writing a blog, actually, part of the this journey of changing back to LI. I've kind of documented the things that I thought were important. When you're changing line, a lot of us like to change because maybe we were taught with something that we genuinely don't love, or we want to explore. And even that I love. I love just getting the pigments arriving and doing the color swatches and things. I will certainly be at a point very soon that my clients will walk in and I'll know, that's a chicory lady, that's what I'm going to use on her today, or this one is this one's a brown sugar lady, and I'll probably get to the point that I'll know what I've used on them without even having to look at my notes, because when you know your line and you get to know it like that, you can tell. But when you are swapping pigment lines, it's important to do that. Don't just have a look at the bottle and look at a chart that you've been given. Have a play with them, put them in some water, pop them on your skin, put them on a bit of paper, work out which ones are going to be your kind of taupe blondes, and which one's going to be your medium brown, and which one's going to be your rich brown, and which ones you're going to use to lighten and darken, and have a play. That's so much fun to do that, and not have the pressure of a client there, and then know that when you are making a choice, you understand what the tones are in that pigment.
Right, 100%. So I have a couple questions I want to ask, a couple things that I think are interesting and are debatable, maybe even a little controversial. It can cause some controversy, but so my first question is, I see some lines launching now that are kind of stating the fade time will last 1 year, or will last 1 to 1.5 years. personally, I don't.
I kind of feel where the question's going with this, Taryn. Go for it.
I just wonder how can a pigment line state unequivocally, like in writing, how long their pigments will last on a client.
Well, they can't, Taryn.
But they're doing it, which is a little.
It's marketing. It's marketing smoke and mirrors. You know.
Yeah, I guess that's what we call it, right?
Yeah, I was going to go there, but I thought, no, let's call it smoke and mirrors.
No, you know, Allison, look, we're not calling out pigment lines. I like to talk about these things in a manner that's not bashing or being negative or calling out lines, but I think these are topics that are important topics that as artists, as technicians, as an industry, we should be able to discuss without the fear of getting into trouble or the fear of being labeled negative or angry or anything like that. I think these are legit topics.
Right back to being nerdy and to what we were talking about when we were just chatting in the warm-up, that I think that the thirst for knowledge in the industry is so much more than it was 5-10 years ago, which is a good thing, but that there are these misconceptions that get peddled out there. I still see people advertising, and calling permanent makeup semi-permanent,
right?
Or saying that if you use a semi-permanent pigment over a pigment, it's going to last different or heal different.
Right.
I still see people talking about the fact that microblading can be done so lightly that we can guarantee that it won't be there in a year. It's just a crock of nonsense.
Well, you know what I think is a little
understand.
What I find kind of convenient about this new marketing that I'm seeing, like I've never seen in all my years a pigment line state how long their pigments will last, like a year. I mean, they're actually even giving a year to a year and a half. I've never seen. But
we know where that's come from, Taryn, and that's come from that fear or that realization of so many artists that they've been using super strong pigment line.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I was just going to say that.
Seeing Mrs. Smith coming back at 4 years with a grey oversaturated eyebrow still, that their marketing has had to shift with these
exactly
them soft and refer to how long they're going to last, because
do you remember the marketing, when the organics first launched, is no need for modifiers. I mean, I just remember Li getting bashed by the new,
another, frankly, that pisses me off.
Well, people accused Li. Yeah, well, the new organic lines all launched, and they were saying, and the marketing then was, these are so strong, they will overcome and cover up any undertone. These are so strong, and they're pre-modified. No modifiers are needed anymore.
Li was modify mean? I mean, no one.
Yeah, but then it didn't take long, Allison, to see modifiers starting to be, introduced to these new lines.
Absolutely. And that's what people would say. Oh well, it's pre-modified. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means that there's been a little bit of additional warmth. Does it mean that you can use it on every single client out of the bottle with the same on everyone in the same way? Of course not, because everybody isn't fits to 21 years old with virgin skin. They're not. You can't use that color in the same way on someone who is more mature, who's got sun damage, who's got a rust undertone. It's not going to be the same. And I think that this was, I suppose, one of the real disservices that a lot of training has given the industry, is this real is that knowledge of the science behind pigments,
Right.
is the knowledge science behind color theory, is the knowledge of the science of the skin. Because when we understand those things, we can look at that marketing and know that we have to read between the lines.
Yeah. I think there's companies and brands out there that are trying to if the struggle is your pigments aren't lasting, well, here's a line we just manufactured, a line, this will eliminate that struggle and this will last forever. Or if they're lasting too long, well, here's a new formula and this will eliminate that problem, because this will fade in a year, or in 2 years time, or here's a remedy for that will eliminate that struggle or that challenge. And the truth of the matter is, no pigment line, including LI, is ever going to eliminate an artist's the challenges and the struggles that we face as artists, including artists like me, yourself, artists that have been doing this a long time, that no pigment line.
I had an artist send me a screenshot about a month ago, and she said, "Have you used these pigments?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And the claim of this particular pigment was that it doesn't shift tone at all. I can't remember the actual words, but it doesn't shift at all. And I think it even said like guaranteed. It was that.
Wow.
It was that. It was that bold in its statement.
Right.
And I think I replied. The person had sent it to me saying like, "Is this true? Is this possible?" And I was like, "Well, no. Again, it's not possible, and it's not the pigment's fault. It's the skin. It's the way skin desquamates. It's the way that the skin regenerates. It's the fact that pigments are different molecule sizes. You're going to get some elements of a pigment leave the skin before the other. You're going to get that shift with other outside factors like UV or medication or all of these other things, which are always, they're not going to stay the same because the skin doesn't stay the same.
100%. So the other thing I wanted to touch on is the myth, right? Because there's a lot of misconceptions in this, as you mentioned, is the myth that iron oxides, they all age red. They turn red. They all red.
If you add half a cup of something carrot coloured to them, like I used to,
right?
Yeah, be a higher possibility. And I think that's where a lot of that misconception comes from. I also think that, or I also know that a lot of that misconception comes from inorganic brands that were not using those right balances, we're not using those right mixes. So, good quality synthetic inorganics should be stable. And LI have proved that. They've cracked that.
No, 100%. I agree with you. There's different red iron ores that manufacturers can use. And some of the red iron ores, just not meant to be in eyebrow colors. They're too strong. They're too long lasting. They're too this, too that, the other. So we've really, through trial and error over the last 30 years, we've really narrowed down our red ores to where, LI, I wouldn't say never, because like you said, no pigment line. I've always been super honest. I wish I could guarantee that LI would never change color, but you can't guarantee that because there's so many outside variables. What I can say 100% with 100% honesty is LI pigments are very stable, and they do very stable, and they do tend most of the time on most clients with good technique, choosing the right color, do age very, very stable. And we see very few extremes with LI. I think, all of a sudden, Allison, I think, where LI, we never, ever, ever saw anything go red. We just never did in all those years. And then the techniques and the needles started to change. We went, the whip shading technique got very, very popular. Tattoo implanting more shallow got very, very popular. And small needles became very, very popular. Those three things, all of a sudden, whip shading, implanting shallow, and using small needles, the single, all became very popular. And then all of a sudden, I could not deny it. I saw, people using LI in 6 months to a year, that eyebrow appeared red or appeared pink, and I couldn't deny it. And I did not, for a couple of years, I did not know what was going on. I'm on the phone with the chemist of LI. We're trying to figure it out. And it wasn't always too much orange. I knew there was something else going on.
Well, I know some of the other things, and some of the things sometimes I see with my microblade conversion students when they're doing case studies for me, is that, and I work very light-handed. I'm not, I'm not a heavy worker. I do like a small needle, but I also use I use 2 or 3 different cartridges in a single brow usually. I like to switch it up. But what I see sometimes when they're coming back, at their retouch appointment, that there is that bit of redness, but the redness tends to be the skin. It's not the pigment. It's because what they've done is they've worked so light-handedly, and often these are people that have seen their clients. Maybe it's only 4 weeks out. Maybe the skin is still settling, and they're saying, what's happened? And my answer, almost 9 times out of 10, depending on the timescales, one is, well, we're only 4 weeks out. If I scratched my arm and I looked at it 4 weeks later, it might still be a little bit pink on some people. So, we need to get some more colour in there.
Right.
And we need to let the skin settle. So that's the most common reason that I see red hues, but that's not the pigment, and that doesn't seem to be like a down the line problem.
No.
The big issue that I definitely know that I had, and that I definitely know that a lot of my colleagues in the UK had, was the modifying, was that we were taught to add too much. I mean, it was a revelation for me, Terry, doing your colour theory course when it first came out, and you saying about using ungrey and just using the end of like a toothpick. I was like, what? Really? I'm wasting so much of this precious modifier, but also what have I been doing? I was, slapping a great big glob of it in there.
Yeah.
And I can still see that modifier sometimes come back on some of my earlier work. And I know that's exactly what it is, because the ones where I wasn't doing that are still, have faded so beautifully. And that's what we want, isn't it? Is a stable fade. You want something that's not too warm, that's not too cool, that can go in and be reworked and refreshed.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing that I figured out that was going on, and this is not a needle thing, right? Because it can happen with bigger needles, mags, 8 shaders, but it was happening a lot with the single needle, and especially newbies on the single needle. And like I said, this is not a needle issue. And sometimes I get people think I'm blaming the single needle, and I'm not. I use the single needle sometimes. I think all needles are equally valuable. All needles can, cause grays, cause reds, cause scar tissue. It's the person behind the needle. But the common denominator, when we were really looking at the red and what is causing this red, if you took a needle, whether it's an 8 shader, a single, or a 5 liner, doesn't matter. No pigment on it. And, you tattoo an eyebrow the way you tattoo an eyebrow, and it's scabbed up, and in a week it healed, it would be pink or red. because you've created scar tissue. You've wounded the skin, and now that skin is discolored, right? Post-traumatic, scar tissue color. And on most Caucasians, it's pink, it's reddish, it can be pinky orangey, it can be even kind of lavender if they have a strong purple undertone. How long that discoloration will last is very different for each client, each person. So in order not to see the pink, the red, the discoloration caused by the trauma of the needle, the pigment needs to stay in the skin and outlast that scar tissue. That scar tissue has to have time to heal away. On some clients, and this is science, on some clients it can be a year before that redness or pink skin heals away back to normal skin color. Now, Allison, imagine newbies getting, some people are taking 3 or 4 hours with the smaller needles, and they're and they're in the skin for 3 or 4 hours with a needle. The longer you're in the skin, we know, causes more trauma. Absolutely. And creates more redness, more scar tissue.
And less. The skin not going to want to hold if you're
right. And exactly. And we know now, if the skin is over traumatized, it tends not to hold pigment as well. If you're going a little shallow, it's going to exfoliate out faster rather than going into the upper dermal area. And I don't mean going too deep or being heavy-handed. I mean just going normal depth into that upper dermal area. And if you're lightly saturating, which a lot of people are lightly saturating now to get that really airy look, then the pigment is going to leave the skin before that red pink skin has time to heal away. And that is what we're seeing. And I think for iron oxides to be blamed for the redness, we need to resolve that. We need to get this information out, that it's not iron oxides. It's not high quality iron oxides. Or there are iron oxides out there somewhere that have really poor quality colorants that are using red iron ores that stain the skin, that last too long. Probably 100%. There's high quality pigments, high quality iron oxides, and there's low quality iron oxides, just like organics. There's high quality organics that are going to perform better, and then there's poor quality, poorly made organics that are not going to perform very well at all. So it's not really an iron oxide versus organics. One's better than the other. It's not a needle, a small needle versus a larger needle, and one's better than the other. It's not whip shading versus circles and one's better than the other. It's really all science.
My other thing, I guess, and it's something because I do a lot of corrections, do a lot of correctional work. If I get a brow in that's 3 or 4 years old and it's a little bit warm, that's easy. Right. Most people need, or easier, in my opinion. Why do I find it a little bit easier to correct or adjust something that's a little bit warm? Well, because most people are inherently cool. So because most people need that little bit of warmth, as long as it's not too heavy and it's not too saturated and it's not something from one of these poor quality inorganics, then it's a nice base for me to work on. Something that's got a little bit of a warm undertone is really nice for me to work with. I can go in with a nice neutral brown and know that it's going to hold nicely and it's going to heal well. Whereas if I get someone come in with a brow that's 3 or 4 years old and it's greyed out, it might be from either a poor pigment choice or the pigment line that has faded in that way.
Right.
I find getting that warmth in is so much more difficult. Personally, I know there'll be other artists that have a totally flipped on its head view of that. But I would always rather be in a position where I need to cool something down than need to warm something up, because from a correctional point of view. Because I just find it easier if it's a good shape if it's a good shape but it's got a slightly warm undertone, I'm rubbing my little hands together. This is forward.
I'm a little bit different than you on that.
Are you?
Well,
I was like, and I'm pleased I said.
Well,
people
a little bit different, a little bit, but I love chatting with artists that have a slightly different philosophy than me and address things from a different mindset and point of view, because I think it's fascinating. And and you just explained why that's your philosophy, and that so it makes sense. It makes sense why you feel that way and why you address that way. It makes perfect sense. My philosophy is a little bit different, but it's twofold. Now, when I first do an eyebrow, virgin eyebrow, and it comes back to me after 6 weeks, I would rather that it's a little on the ashy side. And
a new eyebrow.
Yeah, a little, right? A little on the ashy side, and I just have to add a little bit more warmth. That's just an adjustment. If a brand new brow comes back to me and it's too warm, to me, in my own mind, criticizing me, being hard on myself, I put too much warmth. I over added the warmth. I miscalculated the skin. Now it healed too warm. So now I might have to introduce a green or introduce a different target color that has a green fade, right?
I'm on the same page as you with a new eyebrow.
With a new eyebrow. Right. Okay. I was interested in seeing how you felt about that with a new eyebrow.
Yeah, with a correction, I'm totally different. With a correction, something that's already been in the skin, that's aged, that's already there. You know, it's a client maybe that I haven't seen before. I'm much happier cooling down than warming up.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. On a brow, like a brow comes back 3 years later. Would you rather it be a slightly warm or slightly ash? And I think whenever a brow comes back after 2, 3, 4 years and it's slightly warm or slightly ash, we're winning. Because both are easy, right? We just don't want extremes. You know, if it's extremely warm or extremely gray, that's when it's
kind of nicely talking about lift, which I know was something we were going to talk about.
Yeah, we will have to talk about that.
Which is the perfect scenario when they're too much either way.
I know.
I like lift. I can go, oh, do you know what? This is borderline, but you know, let's do a little lift session and see if we can get a little bit of that out. Make it a little bit friendlier of a canvas to work on. And quite honestly, that's what I use. You know, I know that I think that with removal, when I first started using lift, I thought I was just going to battle a whole world of terrible eyebrows. I thought it was going to be complete removals that I was doing. And in truth, most of the work that I do with lift is correctional. It's to make a little bit more space in the skin.
Yes.
To make something less ashy if it's ashy, to make something less warm if it's, you know, oversaturated and warm, and give myself a better canvas to work on. And it's, you know, I just think that everybody should have that skill or that option. There is just so much correctional work now. How wonderful it is that so many people in the population have been introduced to permanent makeup. But as we journey through, and especially as we journey through a lot of clients now that will have had these really steadfast, strong pigments used on them, you know, removal methods are going to become an essential part of your arsenal, so that you're not having to turn those clients away.
Yeah.
Or being unethical and taking them on and trying to fix something that you think is probably past its best.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I think going into corrections, you know, it's just being a strategic thinker. That's always been me. You know, I'm a Virgo. I'm super analytical. I'm very strategic in my thinking, you know, with every client and every case. And it's just being super strategic. Like,
Mhm.
and yeah, you don't have to remove all the pigment a lot of times if the shape is really good. Sometimes you just have to do
Yeah.
1 or 2 sessions and pull 30 or 40% of that pigment out to create new space to now go in with, a modifier or, a more appropriate, target color. I was so I was in the airport the other day, and I never really peruse Facebook. I just don't. I don't sit on my phone and scroll through, look at what. Yeah, I don't do it too often. I don't have a lot of time. But I was in the airport and I was doing that, and we had a delay. The weather was bad and whatnot, and I did it a couple of days. I have to tell you, I posted about it. To see the words emergency removal being used by, and I am maybe I sound like I'm tooting my own horn a little bit, but Allison, to sit there and see technicians all over the world use the words emergency removal all over the world. Even
Yeah,
other
fantastic.
saline brands are now using it. I got on a website on another brand and they're even using the word, like, those are 2 words that I just kind of came up with in the heat of the moment because it was a client that, and to now, not only is, and I did trademark it, and it was just like this epiphany. It's like, oh my God, I got a little verklempt. I got a little emotional and a little teary eyed, and I'm showing Kat, and I'm like, this is not just 2 words. This is not just a technique. This has become a service. Emergency
And
removal has become
there's something really extra special about
yes,
emergency.
yes, and it's crazy.
Um,
It blew my mind. It's crazy.
When I'm teaching the lift students, I always say, it's something special about this person that's reached out to you. Their day has not gone as expected. No one puts themselves in the chair for a procedure wanting it to go badly. I think a lot of our clients fear it. I think that so many of my clients will sort of say, "Oh, I'm really a bit anxious, or I'm excited, but I'm nervous." And the nerves is always because they have that fear that it's not going to go well. Well, when that becomes a reality, how awful is that for that person? But how wonderful and how powerful that it is that you can give them back some control. And I'll always say when I'm teaching my students that it's you have to approach those really delicately, not from a technique point of view, but from a persona point of view. This person's reached out to you, and to them it is an emergency. Something has happened that if they don't change or address it pretty quick, is going to have long-term, long-lasting consequences for how they look, and that's a big deal for a lot of people.
It is a big deal. It is a big deal, and that's how I started calling it emergency removal. As the client, it was her daughter's wedding was coming up, and she got her brows done, and I declined her. I said, well, because this was the theory for years. For years, we were taught, and it was instilled in us that you can't remove anything fresh. You have to let it heal in and then go back in and break open the skin. And to be honest with you, at some point that didn't quite settle with me. It didn't quite make sense, because in my training classes, if I had a student that made a mistake, I would put some saline on the mistake and that mistake wouldn't heal in. But yet I was afraid to really explore that and experiment with what I was seeing and doing in a training room, not allowing fresh work to heal in when a student made a mistake. I was a little nervous taking that to the next level and trying it on a brand new whole pair of eyebrows for a client. I didn't know if I would burn their face off. I didn't know. I don't know. I just had all these what if something really goes wrong? So I was really conservative, but lo and behold, it worked. And then I got a few colleagues involved. I got Amber and Michonne here doing it. I got a couple other colleagues. And once we got about 15 or 20 cases under our belt, we're like, this is working. This is working, and this needs to be taught. And I just started calling it emergency removal. And at first, the industry did not like that term. And I had some veterans or some people kind of really give me some shit about using that term, emergency removal. But the industry, grabbed onto that term, and the industry liked it. The industry started, and technicians, they started, and they embraced that term. They embraced the technique, and they embraced the service, and look at it now. And now, although
clients can be so desperate, they will put all kinds of horrendous things on their kind of so to give them something which is laboratory grade, safe, tested, delivered by a professional, is brilliant. It's brilliant, and it works so well. It works so satisfying. I mean, so easy. Really, it's
very easy, very simplistic, very simplistic. We're very open and transparent. It's very simplistic. But hey, we're going to have to wrap things up in a little bit. I wanted to talk to you, more in depth about Lift. I wanted to really talk to you about a lot of things. So I'm going to have you back on. But can we just take the last 5 minutes and talk about, you're a new distributor for Li Pigments. And I want to acknowledge that this was something you really thought about. You really, really did. And it's something, because it's not easy being a distributor. And I think that's a whole podcast in itself on, the thought that has to go into it, the financial investment that goes into it, building a store, building this. You're a lot like me, Allison. If you're going to sell a product, it's a product you use and believe in, you understand, and you're going to educate and support. So once you become a distributor for Li, all Li distributors basically have a good understanding of the pigments, and it's a lot of questions. You get a lot of daily questions, you have to really support. It ends up becoming another full-time job being a distributor.
I love that, and I love the idea of that. I already had a very small shop with a few essentials, really only just supplying some of my students with some of the bits and pieces that I knew that I liked. And yes, you can guarantee that if there is something that I'm putting my name to, it is something that I would use personally and something that I believe in. That is just the way that I am. Because I feel that if I'm going to genuinely give people advice on products, that I do have to know them, that I do have to believe them. Otherwise, it just becomes kind of a bit transparent and a bit see-through, I think. So I'm a bit of a control freak, and I've built my shop up to be able to hold the Li products. I did that all myself because I like having control of it. And we're not a big distributor at the moment. Hopefully we'll grow. The stock room is a room at home, at my home at the moment. All of your parcels are packaged by me personally. If you you'll have a note in there which says thank you for your order, and the kiss is signed by me.
Oh my gosh.
If you don't, might be signed by one of my children. I'm very lucky to have a supportive family that will do post office runs and will put things in envelopes, and so yeah, it's something quite small and something quite personal. And I think that there are lots of distributors globally doing an absolutely fantastic job, but what I'm really hoping that I can do is be that person that people can reach out and say, hey Alice, I really love what you said about your story of going back to Li, and what colours should I reach out for, or what are your tips, or what are your advice? Because I'm honestly happy to chat anytime about any of this. I just love talking about what I love doing, and I love the industry, and being able to do that supported by a brand like Li. Well, it's a no-brainer, really, for me, an absolute no-brainer. And I'm so glad that the EU line I'm that I've fallen in love with that as well, because that again just makes everything so much easier, that
Right.
I'm not an addition that is there just because of new regulations. I can genuinely say, you know what, this line is absolutely cracking, which, you know, it's just brilliant, really good.
Yeah, I have I know the Aqua EU is going to be really popular. I know a lot of artists are going to love it the way you do. We're getting lots of feedback from other artists as well, and we're getting some healed results, and everybody's, you know, we're hearing the same thing as you're saying. So, you know, that's really wonderful for me and, you know, everybody at LI to hear. It's always a little it's a lot nervous when you put out a new formula or a new line. You're hoping the artists using it love it as much as you do. You're hoping it performs as you intend it to perform for every artist that, you know, uses
And
it.
that's where I was a few months ago, kind of re-trialing and re-exploring the line. You know, there was that anticipation, and it has not disappointed at all. It really hasn't. So I'm so pleased that it's such a great line. I'm so pleased that I'm able to take this journey and be one of the new LI distributors. And, you know, I hope that it grows, because you know, there's a lot of thought and a lot of just a lot of hard work, I guess, that goes into becoming a distributor, taking that step, and, you know, up the line, like you say, the LI, the lasting impression story, and Darlene and all of the work that they put in, that travels all the way down the line, that work.
Yeah. You know, Allison, you know, great things come to great people, and you're just one of those great people. And you are, you know, and to know you is to you know, respect you and to love you. I think you're a great human, and I see a lot of you in me. You know, I started the same way, me and Kat in a small room. I started distributing LI because it was a line I had already been using 6 years, and I believed in it. You know, and you know, so I see a lot of you in me, and you've joined a great team of distributors. You know, we keep our distributorship, you know, smaller, and you know, we like to know our distributors, and our distributors use our Pigment. So, you know, we're all super stoked to have you. I think we're really lucky to have you, and I predict you are going to grow and grow and grow. And you know, I have no doubt. I have no doubt, and it's going to be really fun watching you grow.
My kids will be working in a warehouse before we know it.
Yes,
right?
yes. Put them to work, right? Keep them out of trouble. Put them to work. I love it. Well, hey, I want to thank you. I know it's late there in the UK.
So much for having me. It really has been an absolute honor. An absolute honor. Thank you so much for inviting me. And yeah, let's do it again, Taryn. Let's do it again.
Yes, yes. Okay, don't go anywhere. I'm going to sign off, but don't go anywhere. Okay. All right. Hey, thank you everybody for joining me today. That was Alice Kingdom from the UK. Thank you for hanging out with me. And remember, stay in the pursuit of happiness, and we will see you next time.